episode of the Overseas Teacher Podcast. I'm joined by a special guest today, Chris Browning, who is one of our experienced teachers. He's been overseas and he has taught online for a long period of time, so I'm very excited to speak to him today. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Carl. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So let's start off a little bit and tell people a little bit more about yourself, Chris. So what made you interested in becoming, firstly, how long have you been teaching English for as an ESL teacher?
Well, I had a break, but it'd be 10 years ago, 2011. But around this time, actually, February time, went out to Korea, South Korea for nearly 3 years, 2.5 years. That was the first time teaching anything, first time living overseas. So yeah, South Korea, out there teaching English in a middle school. Then came back to the UK. Me and my partner were out there at the time. Came back to the UK, then just did other stuff, didn't teach in any capacity, worked in other industries. Then 2017, came out of a long relationship and thought, oh, I'm lost. What do I do now? And I still had the bug, I'd been out there, done it. I still had all those years, from 13 to 17, had that bug 5 years. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Get back out there. I don't want to, I'm on my own again now. I don't want to start from fresh, start renting. Got a job. It's okay. But, I wanted to get back out there. I needed a new start, some kind of refreshment, so to speak. So thought China. I visited China when I was living in Korea, actually. I visited someone we knew for just shy of 2 weeks. So I'd been there once, but it was years ago. And I thought,
which city did you go
to? In China.
Yeah, to begin with, when you first went back out there to teach, what was the first city you taught in?
Beijing. I've only taught in Beijing.
Oh, okay.
In China, yeah. So yeah, visited Beijing, visited a few other places, Tianjin. Yeah, when I was in Korea just as a trip, and thought, yeah, China's a good place. I could do Korea again, but am I just reliving nostalgia? Great place, and I'd love to visit. I've been there again. It's great. But I thought Japan. What about Japan? I was thinking of all these other places. Shall I go in warmer climates? Go down south, to Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, etc. But I thought, no, China's got this draw on me. And I thought, yeah, let's just do it. So asked a friend who was out there working. He had a recommendation where he was working. Just got an interview through that at a kindergarten in Beijing. And applied, got it. It was quite a quick transition, sort of 5 weeks, I'd say, to get the visa, everything sorted, move out there and do, it was quite fast. But just had the bug, essentially. Done it before, and there was still something in me that wanted to do it again. So China was my choice.
But what was it that initially drew you to China? You said you had that, you thought about other places, you dabbled in the idea of going to places like, Thailand, Vietnam, which many people do because the first thing they think of is palm trees and clear blue seas and, swimming and cocktail bars. But you chose China. And what was it specifically that made you choose China before anything else?
Again, it wasn't a certainty. I did look into other options, and I weighed up, culture, wages, salary, and Japan, of course, pays very well, but the living costs are very high.
Yeah.
The ratio, the lifestyle you can live there doesn't, you've got to be a bit more careful, which would be fine. I could do that. I'd manage. I'd love it. I'd enjoy it. But China pays well, very well, comparably to other countries, say in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Philippines, etc. Again, very cheap to live there also. But yeah, China does pay a bit more. I think just the scale of China attracted me. It's so, you don't really get a sense of it, not just geographically as a massive land, but in terms of how different the culture is from the north to the south, how different the weather is from the north to the south, how different the cuisine is from the north to the south, attitudes from the north to the south. You know, it really, it's not just you go from, you know, one city to the next, it changes. You know, it's like having, you know, two continents mixing. You know, you got the northern Europe next to Russia, you got Mongolia, Inner Mongolia, then you get down to where sort of Beijing is, and then you got the middle, the Sichuan region, and then in the south you got Hong Kong, you know, and then, you know, it just varies so much. You know, you're never going to fully see all of it. Even you speak to Chinese people, you know, have you been here? Have you been there? Never been there. Well, why would you know? It's such a big place.
Yeah.
You know? There's places in the UK. I've never been to Scotland. You know, places I've lived overseas, I've never been to Scotland. You know, and I live here. You know, and that takes a few hours drive. You know, I've just not been. So yeah, it's just so much. And the food was a big, yeah. I'll say numero number one that my draw is food. Everywhere in the world, you know. I go to see the beautiful places, the culture, the beaches, you know, but I'm always thinking in the front of my mind, it's what's the food, you know, everything. Oh, we're going on this trip to this Colosseum, this ancient site, but I'm thinking, what are we going to have for breakfast?
See, when I went to China, I never really truly indulged into the cuisine because I was primarily based in Hong Kong and would sometimes drive into Guangzhou, but only for like a day of work. So I never really truly experienced. I think there was a few times where we sat on the round tables and you know we had the dishes where we passed round and we had the noodles and things like that. It was great. But what I will say is I understand why you spent so long in Korea because Korean barbecues are special, man. They are special. I mean, there's nothing like sitting there with a bunch of friends having a Korean barbecue, sinking some beers. But yeah, Korea is great for cuisine. I do recall though that when I went to China as well, the food was good. I just think that because I was in Hong Kong, where it's so you know, it's pretty much England, you know, so everything I was eating was identical to what I'd eat back home. I never really truly and some of the stuff I did have was always sort of like deep fried. I think that's another thing that people think about China as well, is when you say Chinese food, you think of, you know, deep fried, sweet and sour chicken balls and, you know, chicken legs and eating dogs and things like that. You know, but there is this other side to it, right?
Well, you spot on. I mean, in particularly Hong Kong, it's Cantonese. You know, they speak Cantonese. They don't speak Mandarin like,
of course,
you know, majority of China does. You know, and the food, it's different. You know, it's not all of it, but there's the fried stuff we see replicated in the UK, we see replicated in America, Italy, wherever there's a Chinese restaurant. 90% of it is tweaked, westernized, quite oversaturated in fats, sugars, sauces. Of Cantonese food, you know, from that region, the south. You know, it's really hard to get a representation of Chinese food. I mean, it's too big for one to do that. The restaurant menu would be, you know, whatever size the biggest is, you know, one, whatever, which way it works. You know what I mean? It'd be you need a billboard.
It's a big ass menu.
10 billboards. So you only get, unfortunately, in the West, and even in other countries, is Cantonese food. You know, what is Chinese food? A Chinese person can't answer that. It's impossible. You know, British food. You know, if someone's to say that, there's variations in the region, but more or less we could bring it all into the same pot, and we could say the
pies,
staple,
sausage rolls,
right? You know, pastries, potato based meat, roasted or whatever. The Chinese, you can't do that in China. It's impossible. Korea, you know, you could, because again, that's a smaller country. It differs, sure, and they've got the speciality here. Busan, I lived in Busan, which is on the coast, so seafood was you know, phenomenal. You know, but China, you can't do it. In the north, you've got, you know, in Mongolia, you've got a lot of lamb eaten. You've got the Muslim culture, you know, so you know, pork isn't eaten. The way it's cooked, you know, a lot of slow cooking of meats.
Nice.
Then you got in the middle, you got the spice, you know, in the Sichuan region, you know, the hot pots, you know, which is, you know, gets me more excited than anything. I'm a big spice head, you know, I absolutely love chili. You know, it's just sad being out of China. You know, it's so hard. I have to cook my own food to get any kind of semblance of heat, you know.
Yeah,
because
for
like
sure.
my tolerance is really high. Yeah, big on spice. And then in the south you got Cantonese, you know, completely different dim sum, and stuff like that, you know. But you get restaurants in Beijing that cater for all of that, you know. You go to the Nanjing restaurant here, you go to the Cantonese restaurant here, you go to the Muslim restaurant here,
And it's
you know.
affordable, right?
Sure, that's it. Yeah, you could eat out. It is still a scale. Some cost more, but really afford it comparably, you know, to the rest of the world, Europe and America. Yeah, on for a foreigner, you know, a foreign teacher, an ESL teacher. Yeah, you can eat comfortably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other thing as well. I remember is when I did go to Guangzhou and Hong Kong. I know it's wrong to compare the two because they are completely
Mm,
different, but that's the only really sort of resemblance of China to a degree that I ever got.
mm,
Um, I recall walking around the street sometimes at 1 a.m. and there'd be
mm,
old guys sat in a restaurant somewhere eating noodles, and
sure.
it seems like that it's just around the clock. If you're hungry at 2 a.m., there's definitely a place that you can go to where they're selling some hot cuisine. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. You know, you get your app out, you know, the equivalent of Deliveroo. You've got one called Elema, which is one of the big Chinese ones. Yeah, you put it in. Some won't be open at 1, but there'll be another one open, you know, and you can see how far it's going to take to deliver. You just go out and there's, you know, the ratio of an individual to delivery drivers, you know, it's 50-1. It's just, you know, it's just you know, convenience, fast delivery, want it, it's going to come fast now sort of culture, you know.
Yeah,
That, but they've got the population to support that, you know. There's enough drivers out there
of
to
course.
do it. It's a big country, you know. The scale, there's areas, you know, there's enough roads, there's enough you know, infrastructure to support that,
Yeah,
which other countries just simply couldn't do. um, you know, there's just the demand for it, you know. And because it is relatively low cost, even for people um, on a maybe not on the same bread line as a higher, and especially in the cities, you know, there is still affordable food. But not everyone orders all the time. People cook at home. I cooked when I lived there. You know, I love cooking. You know, it's no problem. My girlfriend loves cooking, so you know, it balanced out. Some people I knew did just eat out all the time. They'd order in. It may not be the most expensive, but you know, it's just on your lifestyle. But it's there. Yeah, you're right. It's there. You want it, you can get it, you know.
yeah,
Compared to, you know, this country, 11 o'clock, that's it, you know, cut off.
yeah. I know. And
4 o'clock to 11, that's your window of opportunity if you want
yeah,
to
totally,
order food.
totally.
And
I mean, obviously, there's the occasional place that's open after 11 o'clock, like your kebab shops and whatever else. But
yeah,
you only usually tend to attend them if you've been out the night before.
right.
Whereas in China, it's completely different. Two guys can go out and meet each other for a chat at 2 a.m. in the morning over a bowl of noodles, and that's completely and utterly okay. Which I think is like
Yeah.
really, really quite cool.
And we're not going to see our 80-year-old, 70-year-old grandma working in a restaurant at midnight, you know,
Exactly.
cooking food. We're just, you know, there'd be some kind of action taken, you
Yeah.
know. It just, no, just massively different. I'd say I don't want to say lump all of Asia into one bowl. It's so diverse, but
Of course, of course.
just the side of the East versus West, you know, it's a huge, yeah, huge difference. You know,
Yeah.
obviously it wasn't a shock to me in China because I'd lived in Korea, which is not quite on the same scale for food and places open, but it's not far off. You know, it's a smaller country. You know,
Did
it's
you
like the
find
size of.
Did you find, just going back to the topic of food again, did you find that when
Mm,
you went to these sort of like small individual restaurants, that
mm,
the people who are serving you the food really, really care about your experience? They really care about making sure that you walk away and have enjoyed the experience. That's what I found anyway. When I'd go to these sort of small corner
mm,
restaurants, there would be like an 80-year-old lady who would serve me something, and I ain't got a clue what it is I've ordered. I've just gone, I'll have that. And she'll
sure,
bring
sure.
something out, or in sometimes they'll bring something out that maybe they recommend or think that you would like.
Mm,
And the experience I had anyway was they really cared about making sure you had a good experience, because this is something very peculiar for them. They don't
mm.
often see somebody like ourselves come into a restaurant like theirs and try this food. Is that something else that you had?
again, it varies from region. You know, if you're in Beijing or Shanghai and Hong Kong, primarily because they're familiar with Westerners, just the turnover of food they're pumping out, you know, all day, every day.
That's another thing. The restaurants are
there's
so
not
busy.
a focus on you as an individual, really. You know, it's just, here's your food. Oh, you've paid. Thank you. And you know, there's just a different culture. You know, they don't have to. You know, if you're sitting there eating, you know, we sit and eat a meal here. Sometimes you get annoyed, the waitress, because the manager's told her to come over 3 times to ask how your meal is. You know, that's just a cultural difference. Over there, you don't have that, but it wouldn't be rude to not have that. To someone to not say thank you, to not say please, isn't rude. You know, there's words for that, there's expressions, but it's not the structure of the conversation and the culture and society. It's not, doesn't mean it's rude. Some people can find that. I think foreigners first time over there, they're a bit taken aback, but it doesn't mean
that's true.
They're antagonistic to you. It just means it's just not the done thing, you know.
Because again, you'd see an old guy who'd just be ordering more and more food, you know, on his own, smoking a cigarette in a corner somewhere. Just and to me, I think, wow, that's ever so slightly obnoxious, but in actual fact, it's just how it is. It's not obnoxious whatsoever. And likewise, the waiter or waitress doesn't think so either. They just think this is another guy. He's probably a regular, and this is just the way it is.
Yeah, and like I say, the tokenism they've in, you know, you go to some areas and you see a foreigner, it is literally people almost walking into lampposts, you know. you know, I went to a desert in Mongolia, great place, like really strange place, just this desert, like in the middle of nowhere. That's what a desert is, but no, it just seemed in an odd place anyway. And yeah, I was the only foreigner there, you know, really busy, and just the looks I got. But you know, I mean, I'm in Beijing, no one gives an iota because they're just used to it. There's a lot of tourists, there's a lot of you know, people working overseas. So yeah, in the cities, not so much. But yeah, sure, sometimes an owner's just really happy that you've enjoyed the food. If you mention it, you know, they like it. But other places, they just want people in and out. You know, it's just high turnover. It's not personal. You know,
well, that's the other thing I was going to say as well, especially in these condensed city areas, these restaurants are packed. I mean, I've seen, especially when it's a really popular place, sometimes you see queues of people outside waiting to go in for food, and that's not peculiar whatsoever, right?
Sure. No, absolutely. Yeah, there's no, sometimes there's a queue forms, then it just becomes whoever's there. But they have ticket systems, you know. I think from the outside people can maybe see it's like, oh, they're not queuing, they're not orderly, you know. But there's a system in place, you know. It just works, you know. You know, there are a lot of people. You know, you go to, sure, London's busy, you know, other cities are, Liverpool busy, you know, Leeds busy, but it's not, it's noticeably different. It's noticeably more dense in the cities in China, but it all works. You know, people don't bump into each other. There's bikes weaving in and out, you know, people's legs. You know, it just does. It just, there's some kind of synchronicity that works.
I think
doesn't make any sense, you know. And they might not. And some drivers drive like maniacs. You know, they'd be pulled over. You know, if in the equivalent country, you know.
Totally.
But it works, you know. They're able to do it. They
agree,
expect it because everyone expects
exactly
it.
What you mean.
Because everyone expects it. Everyone's like got a synergy. You know, everyone's moving in fluid motion. You know, whereas, you know, over here, someone just started to diverge off, or, you know, it's just not how our society is structured. You know, and it's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's just, you notice it, of course, but then you just become part of it.
Well, that's it. I think that's perfectly well said. You have to, if you're going to China, or anywhere in Asia, really, you have to get rid of that English way of thinking, because that is all about to be eradicated. It's not to say that one works better than the other, like you said. They both work well within their own systems.
Yeah. And some people, you know, I've known people who Westerners who don't stop complaining about it. You know, they've been there for years, but they'll still say, oh God, you know, so busy. Oh, they drive like someone drives like this and taxi driver, you know. And so come on, you're going to be used to it by now. You know, it's not really affecting your life negatively. You know, it's just some people like to complain, you know, they'll find anything. But yeah, there's no right or wrong. It's just completely different society. You know, you go to, even the US would be different to the UK.
Of course.
People driving in France different to the UK. You know, it's, you don't have to go that far to see differences like that. But yeah, it all just works. It's just a really good synergy, and the transportation there is impeccable. You know, public transport.
Yeah, I agree. They've got some of the best
trains.
the metro system's amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
Just going back to your story then. So you came to China because you wanted a fresh start. And how long were you in Beijing for?
Just about 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
I don't know, something's happened. I can't put my finger on it. So I finished the job at the end of 2019. And I was meant to be transitioning to another job, but they didn't go ahead with that. They stopped hiring. Anyway, so I thought, oh, it's Christmas is coming up. This was November. So I thought, oh, Christmas is coming up. I'll go back to the UK, come back here for Christmas, have a sort of extended break. And usually regarding visas, when you change jobs, it's kind of stamped that you're transitioning from one job to another. You get a release letter from your company, you take that to the next job, blah, 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 blah. So because that didn't quite happen, I thought, oh, I'll just go home, have a longer break, then apply for a new visa. You know, it's easy. Last time I did it, it took me a month. You know, I've got not working, bish, bash, bosh, done, know what to do, know the process, you know, like the back of my hand, easy. And this was the 15th of December I came back, 2019. Corona was just a beer, you know, just the beer you put lime in. And then, coming up to Christmas, the news is on about Wuhan, you know. Obviously, I'm paying attention to it because it's in China, you know, but not thinking much of it. You know, there's been issues with, you know, bird flu, avian flu, swine flu before in that part of the world. You know, they've had problems with viruses before. But, you know, we didn't, you know, expect the precedent. Anyway, so yeah, start applying for the visa, and then there's lockdowns over there, you know. And anyway, a few problems with getting paperwork. I needed to change my address on my driving license to prove who I was. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, bureaucracy, all red tape nonsense, you know.
For sure.
You know, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so it took longer than expected. So come the end of February, hadn't got my visa, but I got to the end. Yeah, get to the place. Then China, no more people allowed in, you know, no more visas issued. So this is March. Summer, the whole thing, nothing. You know, we're kind of in and out of lockdowns in this country. Get to September. Yes, finally they open up again. Oh, great. Start the process again because your documents, your applications, they expire after a period. Start again, get again, further in, get to the finish line again. Oh no, another problem, another lockdown. We're banned. Here we are, March the 4th, 2021. So
it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride.
2019 to here, and I'm no further forward.
Well, it's the thing is I think for a lot of people who are keen to go out to China, and this is the first time they've ever done anything like this before. It's very, you know, difficult for them because it's the exact same process as you. It keeps stopping and starting. But you had actually created a whole life for yourself out there. You were there for 3 years. You know, I hope you don't mind me saying, but your partner's out there still. And you have a life in China. You have an apartment in China, and you can't get there because of this damn pandemic.
Well, and a new job as well that I got. I was signed in January last year. So every year they've been wanting me. They still want me, you know, which is great. But yeah, before I carry on with that point, I want to emphasize, it's not usually that difficult to get a visa and go to China. It is purely the chaos of
of course
the world in general.
This is a unique situation.
I don't want to put people off for the future. You know, it's not like we're not welcome, wanted, or it's difficult. It's a very unique situation. Like I said, first time I did it in a month. Get in, get fine. But yeah, it's Yeah, I've been out there. Yeah, I've got a girlfriend, Chinese, so she's still there, living her life. It's pretty much normal there now. Yeah, had an apartment, that has to pay for. She's been in it, don't get me wrong, it's not completely wasted, but yeah, and a job that I've not started.
Yeah.
Never met anyone there face to face. But I am in an advantage in that sense because I know what to expect. I've done it. It's not new territory. I know the city. I know what's what. I know what to do. There's new. When I get there, there'll be quarantine, etc. That'll be new. But the rest of it, I'm in a position where it should be a smooth transition, so to speak. I'm not a fish out of water.
Yeah, of course.
And when it does happen, it'll just be, get back into it. It'll be like nothing's ever happened. But yeah, it's been a ride. But yeah, just had to stay positive, and not be pessimistic or defeatist, so to speak, but be realistic about what's happening in the world. Don't expect, oh, by this date this will happen. If it does, it does. The world doesn't revolve around me. It's what regulations they set. They make the call. I just have to tick boxes. So that's kind of had to maintain that mindset. It's been hard because I've seen, on different chat groups, people have made it back last year. They just got lucky. They had maybe the right documents, things hadn't expired, they just got through, so that was hard at times to see that.
Well, look,
but yeah,
Chris, I admire your persistence, and I I've said it to you before. We've been speaking with each other for the last year since you've been working with us, which we're going to go on to.
Sure.
But I truly do hope that eventually you can get out to China and restart your life again. So and it looks as if today, as we stand, it does look like it's becoming more and more likely. We've got some sort of roadmap now that the country's working towards, and hopefully the visa system starts to get up and going again. I hear perhaps it'll probably be in the early summer, end of spring, but let's see. Like you said, the best way to deal with this situation is keep your fingers crossed. But anything can change. So
yeah, I expect. So again, it sounds negative. I expect disappointment, because that means I'm ready for it.
Yeah,
I've had a year of it. I'm conditioned to it. And I'm pretty good at adapting to change. So it's annoying. But I'm healthy. I'm working. People around me are healthy, working. It could be worse. I'm fortunate. Unfortunate in one sense, but it could be worse. So
yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think it's very admirable how you look at this situation. But I do think it's now important for us to discuss a little bit about that period of obviously you come back to the UK around Christmas time, everything exploded. You couldn't go to China, so you have to find some way of making an income, and you became an online teacher at the Overseas Teacher with Us, which
yes.
For those listening, Chris Browning is without a doubt one of our greatest teachers we've got, one of our best assets. I know he doesn't like being flattered that much, but
he's going to say it on every podcast to everyone.
No, but honestly, this is the truth. We have monthly events, and every single time Chris walks away with the prize. So I don't know. Perhaps there's some sort of bias.
Well, I'm not going to be popular.
Well, that's it. I mean, look, he's one of the best teachers, and somehow he always wins the monthly events. But he's doing something right, that's for sure. But I just want. No, sorry.
There's no backhands. I was going to say there's no exchange.
No, this is all legit. But I want to speak to you a little bit about that transition of going from a face-to-face overseas teacher to an online teacher. What was that transition like for you? And what made you decide, other than obviously the fact that, because you could have got a job at Asda or Tesco or something like that, what made you go for the job to be an online teacher?
Well, you mentioned Asda. I did actually apply for Asda. It was like a order picker, you get the online orders coming. I did apply for that. I was just there was no plan, like I say, getting the visa fell through. So around March time, lockdown, we're banned from traveling to China. So yeah, I've got to apply for a job now. Obviously I didn't before. It would have been a waste of time because everything was optimistic. It's possible.
Totally.
I could taste it. I could grab it. Anyways, yeah, I applied for various jobs. Amazon, I think, general warehouse stuff. I've done all sorts before. I've worked those sort of jobs. Anyway, I didn't get that. Saw the position for this and thought, oh, that's good. But I'll be honest, I was dubious only because I'd never worked for a UK-based teaching company. I've never taught here, let alone online. So I was like, are these guys the real deal? What are they about? I didn't, because it was a new territory, for the industry, a lot of people
Very
in general,
true.
Regardless of your background. So anyway, yeah, applied. This is the only online teaching position I applied. Thankfully got it, appreciated. But the transition, my last job in China was an online teaching job, but it was in a studio. I wasn't in my apartment. I was in a studio. So green screen, cameras, lights, tech guys, similar to how this works. So instead of a PPT, there'd be a presentation in the background, with characters, very colorful, the target language, etc. I'd stand there with my Chinese co-teacher, and we'd interact. You've got to have high energy, a bit of buffoonery, and you kind of meant to be animated. Oh, look, a lion! Whoa! If you go online, you can see these sort of videos. You have to ask. It's similar to this. Just on a larger scale, a bigger screen. And it's green screen, yeah. So you can't wear certain things. And anyway, yeah, so I'd done that. This was projected out to an audience, I think up to sort of 1,000 students. They could be anywhere in China, it wasn't just in Beijing, it was online. So,
1,000 students?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, maybe bigger.
Wow.
Now. I'm not sure how it's working, but yeah, to a big audience. But obviously you couldn't see them. Obviously you can't have 1,000 mini cameras, feeding through of, Jojo, John, Mary, so you had no connection with them. It's just you looking at the camera, the TV with what you've got to say, because obviously you're not looking behind you, it's a green screen.
Yeah.
And you'd be delivering whatever. Yeah. Oh, the missing letters are in the jungle. Okay, let's go, everyone. A lot of TPR, very similar, but you're standing up, so you can do a bit more movement. And I'd say something in English. My Chinese co-teacher, she'd say the exact same thing in Chinese, but she'd also speak English to me. So there's an interaction. And that was like an hour-long lesson. Varied on the material, but similar to this, and then there'd be a test at the end. It'd be like 3, 2, 1, let's go. What did you learn? We'd go off the live feed, they'd answer the questions, come back. Oh, fantastic scores, everyone. You learnt everything today, etc. And so that was online, but not interacting with the kids. This was to an audience, it was live, but it could have been pre-recorded, in the sense of the communication from us to who we're teaching. We don't know them, it's just a message. So very different with you've got 8 students, 5, however many, and you get to know them. It's very personal. Of course, you don't see them outside the classroom, but you can still get to know them. You can see where they live, what they like doing, the brothers, sisters, families, which is great, So yeah, you do build a rapport for them, even if it's only for 6 weeks or however long the term is. But yeah, I think because they are obviously Chinese students that we're working with, I had that experience. I did have an advantage. I taught in kindergarten in classroom face-to-face. So there were younger kids. I taught them from 2 until they were 6. So yeah, I'd had experience one-on-one, and in kindergarten, you're helping them with other stuff, you've got to tell them how to eat correctly. You got to tell them, pull up your trousers, tie your shoelace, you need the bathroom, go. You had a helper, you had a co-teacher, and what we called a daily life teacher who was responsible for cleaning them up or changing their clothes if there was an accident, when they have their nap time, this sort of thing. But yeah, you're in their life, 5 days a week, at that age, you're
Very important
two years
age.
2 years old, they're a sponge, they're picking up everything. And they're trying to learn English, they're learning Chinese and English. But back to the point, yeah, so coming into this, I had a familiarity with the culture, the background of these kids, which was an advantage, I think. And it wasn't, they're Chinese, or it'd be that if I hadn't taught whoever they were, if they're Italian, if they were British kids even, if I hadn't have taught previously, it would have been a bit, daunting at first, I think, because you got these kids just staring at you.
Yeah,
you got to
totally.
perform, you got to get it right, you got to hope they learn. You try your hardest, they learn. That's the goal. So yeah, it wasn't too difficult of a transition for me, other than the technical side. Getting comfortable with that and not panicking. Making, and I did at first. Yeah, I did at first. It is. You've got a lot to organize. You don't want it to go wrong. These are, at the end of the day as well, the parents are paying. They want a great product. They want a great class. They want the kids to be engaged. They want them to, want to come back to the next class. They want to say,
and you can bet them
today?
You can bet they're monitoring it as well. You can bet they're watching somewhere.
Yeah, I'm being watched by the parents, being watched by the company. Other teachers are going to watch it. Sure. So there's that added pressure. You don't have that in the classroom. In the classroom, it's you. Your co-teacher, there might be an occasional observation, but 99% of the time, it's just you doing your own thing, so yeah, I mean, as well, my teaching in Korea and in China, I'd never had a curriculum. I've always just taught what I wanted on the day. Nice. There might be a theme, like a special day or this sort of thing, but generally I was the master of my own destiny with what I taught the kids. So obviously coming into here, there's a set curriculum for their age group, their level, which, is fine. I do happen to speak the language, so it wasn't, too difficult to kind of interpret. But yeah, just the technical side initially was not that I'm, a technophobe at all. I use it all the time. I'm completely familiar with it, but just using it and it being smooth, to make a smooth lesson. That's the thing. That's the pressure. It's got to be smooth. You can speak the language, what it is, but how can you translate that to them in a box, so to speak, without going overboard? It's their second language, so you've got to translate all of that and make it smooth and do it in the time and, not panic, because if they see you're panicking, they'll be like, oh, what's this? I'm not comfortable. Yeah. They will feed off you. If you're confident, you've got good energy, they will feed and respond well off yourself.
I think that's so true, that last point you just made. I think that a lot of the time, I've witnessed people freeze up, like you said, because something doesn't go right. But I think that realistically, the software is very important. The technological side is extremely important. But the most important factor is the teacher. And if the teacher remains calm and creates you can teach regardless of what's going on in the software. We could teach just on a Zoom call. The software just complements the lesson, But exactly. I think at the overseas teacher, I obviously don't want to speak too much on behalf of the company, but I do think we try to support our teachers as much as possible in terms of learning to become confident using the technology.
100%, yeah.
But the rest is in their hands.
Yeah, well, completely. The courseware is there, but you can't just, it is a script to an extent, but it's not. You can't just read off the sentence and then, and then look at them. Fill this out. It's how you use your hands, how you use the gestures with the tools. Lines, boxes, etc. And yeah, that's the thing. This job, it really does provide you with the confidence, enough chance to build up your confidence with the system, and then the rest is down to your style, and that can take time. Like I say, I did have an advantage, not just working around technology, teaching in general with Chinese kids. I did a lot of familiarity, but yeah, I was still nervous when I first taught on this, you know, because you don't want to make mistakes. You're meant to be a professional, you know. They're paying to have a teacher teach them a language. This is your job, you know. You don't want to make a mistake, you know. You want to look the part. You want to look like you know what you're doing, you know, not just speaking. You know, entertaining them is a huge part because it keeps the rapport, it keeps them engaged. But yeah, you've got to, it's got to be smooth, you know.
I agree. I think you're right. I think it's important to know, to people listening who might be interested in potentially getting involved in online teaching, that if you do the online teaching with certain companies and you don't meet, say, a particular way or style that they require, then the chances are you could lose your job very quickly. But I think that every single person that comes to work with us at the overseas teacher I think it's important to invest time in each individual, because everybody can teach.
Yes.
But the level of which someone can teach is down to them. Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And there is that freedom to have your own style. Like I say, we're restricted to an extent in, you know, we're in this box, like I said, you know, but in terms of the way you present yourself, and you can introduce additional elements, you know, your humor, your sense of humor, how inquisitive you are, you know, comes from you. That can't be, there's certain things that can't be taught, you know, and it comes with time, you know, and obviously with the kids, you know, you get to know them over a period of time, and of course everyone's just more comfortable with that. But yeah, no, the tools are there, the training's there, you know, everything, all bases are covered. And then, yeah, you just have to come into your own, you know, which, yeah, how some teachers teach online, would they be the same in the classroom? I don't know. There's so many variables there in the classroom, you know. The kids have got more movement, you know, but the way they behave, you know, their parents expect them to sit there and do what is told. You are the authority figure, you know. You can't let that slide either, you know. You know, my style, I am quite jovial with them, and, you know, and really do try to make them laugh and make, you know, sort of quips, you know, and whatnot. But, you know, I don't let my guard down, you know. I still make sure they know that they're here for this amount of time. They've got to participate. Everyone's got to participate, but I'm not stern, you know. You got to get that balance right, you know, which comes with practice, you know. But yeah, they, you know, on the whole, the kids are great, you know. They a lot of them, most of them do want to learn, you know. So any potential teachers, don't worry that the kids are going to stand up and walk off, you know. It's very, very rare, you know, that happens, you know. The kids will participate. They will, you know, enjoy your lesson if you put yourself into it. You'll get it back from them, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's the very well said. It's all about what you put in. I think the best way for us to, as we approach the end of this podcast, I think the last thing I want to ask you before we go is, why should somebody teach overseas? And this is going back to obviously teaching abroad. And is it for everyone?
It is for everyone if they have the right attitude, you know. It's going to be new for a lot of people, you know, like any job. You start it once, you're new at it. But if you have a very insular attitude or a very negative attitude, I'll just put it this way. I've known people who do it purely for the money, you know. They do it because they didn't know what to do in their home country, or they finished university wherever in the world, and they're like, oh, what to do, there's no jobs, etc., etc. So they've gone overseas to teach, you know, because, you know, there's jobs where you have to have a certain level of qualifications, you know, TEFL, CELTA, etc., teaching degree perhaps. Then there's other jobs where you can kind of be anybody, as long as you're not from there, you know, and you speak English as a first or even second language. You know, some people, you can get jobs in China. They may not pay as well, and visas are a bit, you know, like this. But if you do everything by the book, and you're willing to accept that you're going into a completely different culture, and your expectations shouldn't be based on what you're familiar with. You know, if you've got to be open to change, you've got to be open to adjustment. You've got to have a positive attitude if you want to get the most out of it. You know, you've got to like doing it. You know, there are people who get by, but I think to be fulfilled and to want to keep doing it, you've got to enjoy teaching. You know, and I do. You know, I like to see change. You know, I see it with the kids. With this program, from day one to the end of your last class, when you say goodbye, you can see change. You know, that's what I want. You know, as long as they I can say, oh, they actually have learned something. You know, and you see, you know, even, you know, if it's gradual, you know, or if there's some spike, sometimes there's a big spike. You know, you're like, wow, I didn't expect them. It sounds bad. I didn't expect him or her to answer that. You know, like that. And wow, where did that come from? You know, 2 weeks ago you couldn't get a click out of you. But yeah, no, I don't want to say it is for everyone. I'll be honest, because it's about your attitude. You've got to have the right attitude. You know, going over just purely for money, I mean, nothing to stop people doing it, but I think it's a lot more fulfilling and full if you do it because you want to experience the culture. You know, and that some people, maybe that will come second, you know, and, you know, I think you do have to have a degree of, yeah, accepting that people will tell you what to do, and you can't really fight that. You know, you can't be opinionated, you know, because it's not your culture. It's not your, you don't have any say in the jurisdiction, so to speak. You know, you've got to be comfortable with that. You know, I can't just, you know, I could live in China for 20 years, but I will never be Chinese. You know,
yeah.
I could speak the language, I could, you know, be fully immersed, you know all about it, but yeah, I'll always, not just China, everywhere, you know, other countries as well. You're never going to be, you'll always be seen as someone working there, excuse me, so to speak, compared to a citizen, which isn't a bad thing. It's a completely different society, you know, different culture. So yeah, you've got to just adapt. You've got to be adaptable. Yeah, like what you do, like it, really have an interest in it. Be open-minded. Yeah, just be open-minded. And it, you know, the saying, travel broadens the horizon, it is a cliche, but I'd say it's probably the most accurate cliche that I live by, personally, because it really does. You know, my worldviews, my general outlook on people, civilization, whatever it may be, is based in the last, you know, decade of me having lived overseas. You know, tolerance, you know, adaptability, you know, all these things. Yeah, you pick up. And again, yeah, some people could do it for a year, may not like it, but, you know, I bet they won't complain that they had a, you know, an awful experience. You know, I'd be very surprised. There are some jobs maybe that aren't as what they advertise. You know, you have to be careful. And I've got an eye for it. Like I say, I was dubious about this job because there are a lot of con jobs, I want to say. Again, I don't want to put people off, because if you do it the right way, but, you know, it's a big industry.
But likewise, so, it's the same with everything else, really, isn't it? You know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Your pay might look great on paper, but once you start working there, is the working conditions great? Are people nice? You know, do you want to go 5 days a week? When you wake up in the morning, you think, oh God, I'd rather be dead. You know, you know, do you want that? You know, because I've not had that with teaching. You know, because the kids, for me, that's the point I'll sort of finish on. The kids bring out the best of you. You know, you do get to know them. You know, you see them all the time. You know. And yeah, you get a buzz off their energy and sort of their innocence, you know, and yeah, I don't know if it would work if I was to teach how British kids would adapt to online teaching. I don't know. I really don't know. You know, I've 2 nephews and I can't imagine them sitting and listening.
Oh, I agree. I've got younger siblings too.
You know, it's just very culturally, you know, the education system over there, you know, career in China, you know, sort of level head for focus education from 2 years old to you finish university, you know, at 25, you know, 2.5 decades of this is it, you know. I don't want to say they don't have time to be human, be kids, but yeah, culturally,
there's a lot of focus on education
in China is huge, absolutely huge. Yeah, and we play a part of that. We're playing a part in that now, you know. Again, I'm grateful that not for the coronavirus, but I've had an opportunity to at least work, and that's because this industry, you know, exists. It's still in early fruition to an extent, you know, but the framework, the foundation is there for it to increase, you know, massively. You know, it doesn't mean that you know, anytime soon, I don't think that traditional schools will vanish, you know, partly because, you know, there's still the wealth factor, you know. It is you know, it's not free online education. You have to pay for it, you know. It's not like a state school, you know, we have here.
And it works.
So it works, yeah. It does work. I'd say the only, I wouldn't say downside, but I guess what you lose, the only thing you really lose online is a greater scale of socialization for children, you know, that you get in a classroom, you know, the way they interact. Sure, they're friendly here, you know, the kids here, you know, they laugh with each other, they see each other, they're happy, they talk to each other, but it's very different, you know, in this confinement compared to in a live classroom, so to speak. So that's the only thing that I think, you know, could be affected. But yeah, it's not there yet. What will happen in decades to come, I don't know. You know, this has been unprecedented, this whole scenario. So it's all shifted very quickly, you know, but it already existed in China anyway. Like I said, I was working in an online job. It wasn't.
But there's become such an emphasis
video
on it
chat
in recent times. But I do think that what you said is very right about the fact that if you're going to China, some people will immediately be drawn by the economic part of it, you know, the salary, etc., which is brilliant. But if you go there with the intention to fall in love with the idea of watching people progress because of what work you put in, that's how you know you're going to have, you know, the fulfillment that anybody wishes to get from any sort of job, which I think what you said was perfect on the spot. But yeah, I think you know, this podcast has been brilliant, Chris. I think that anybody who watches this to the end is going to have a much wider understanding of, you know, what it's like to teach online and teach overseas. So I thank you very much for your time.
Sure. And I'll just say, for every horror story I may say or you hear about with online teaching, overseas teaching, for every horror story, it's far outweighed by great experiences, you know. Most people have a great story to tell, you know. Like you say, it's like any country, any industry. There's bad spots, there's not, you know. But I would say, to summarize the question, go out there, do it, but have the right attitude. Don't expect it to be like your life experience beforehand, because it's very different.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate your time, man.
No worries, Carl.
This has been episode 4 of the Overseas Teacher Podcast. Tune in next week. We'll have another special guest in with us. Thank you very much again, Chris. Take care.
You're welcome. Thanks, Carl.